Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book Universe in Thor, issue number 30. This is, I believe, the 2021 volume of Thor, if I'm doing my math correctly. This is the one that Donny Cates started. He's no longer on it anymore now. Holy crap, what the frig? So I'm a little, perplexed here, but at the same time, I do, believe it or not, actually read the comments. Sometimes I wish I didn't, but I do sometimes read the comments nonetheless. I see some people talk about, dude, why aren't you reading Thor? I don't know. Donny Cates pisses me off. So one day I decided to look at it. I'm like, oh, Donny Cates is no longer on this. I actually, and make no mistake, I actually love Donny Cates, and I think that Donny Cates is absolutely the future of comic book writing. I just wish that he would actually focus on comic books instead of everything else that he's focused on and stop trying to do the lowest hanging fruit, which is kind of leading to some of the problems why, although listen, I love this comic book. I can't give enough praise about this comic book. This is some absolute badassery, but there's some things in here that I didn't like that I recognize as being leftovers from when Donny Cates and his mentor, Aaron, Jason, what the heck was that guy's name? Jason Aaron? Anyway, the guy who's been doing Avengers and all that stuff. Yeah, the things I didn't like about this comic book are all, for the most part, leftovers of that. Let's talk about this comic book because it's mostly praise. And we'll start off with who actually made this book. So, Torunn Grønbekk. Torunn Grønbekk. I'm probably butchering that name, and my apologies. Nick Klein, easy enough name, right? He did art, and Matt Wilson did the color art. VC's Josepino on letters and design, and Nick Klein does the variant cover. Or no, the main cover. Okay, awesome. So all of the art is done by Nick Klein. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. You know what? One of my primary nitpicks is that sometimes, most of the time, you have a cover artist and then there's the internal penciler, and it's like, no, they should both be the exact same person. If Nick Klein is doing all the art, I want you to think about that. I want you to think about it. He's doing the pencils, which is the layouts, and then he's doing the finishes, which is the inks. Then he's also doing the colors on here. No, well, he's not doing the colors. That's Matt Wilson. Shut up. He did the colors of the cover. And he's doing the cover. That's a lot of work. Nick Klein is a freaky, I don't know if he's a monster doing this, but he's absolutely a machine. Part monster. Holy crap. Nick Klein is Mecha Godzilla. I figured it out. So anyway, absolutely love what he's doing here. And I guess one of the things that we should look at to say that this is a really good comic book is that there are, 1, 2, 3, 4 variant covers. So 5 covers total for this comic book. This is an issue number 30. And they've got 4 variant covers? That's crazy. So yeah, it makes sense. Also, I should probably mention Thor was created by Stan Lee, his brother Larry Lieber, and Jack King Kirby, baby. This comic book, man. We got Bohr. This is the father of Odin. Bohr. God damn it. Bohr is in the past. This is not a present day thing. So that's cool because that would have also been kind of like some low hanging fruit. Like when all of a sudden Jason Aaron goes and brings us the original sins and was it original sin where the serpent, whatever the hell his name was, Odin's brother was out there and is like, hey, I'm the brother and I'm awesome because I'm gonna break Captain America's shield, and I'm awesome because I'm going to send down hammers from the sky to land in the laps of villains who've had their butts kicked time after time after time, and a couple heroes, and I'll poison their minds and just whatever. Whatever. There's been some things that have been cool, but mostly not. All this low-hanging fruit. Let's change the past and change this and change that. No. Interesting stuff is when you say, we've already got the plots. We've already got the history of the comic books. Let's instead just make stories. And instead of changing the past because we can't work within the confines of a certain space, okay, let's just change everything. Hate that. So I love the idea that, what's her name again? That I'm butchering? Torunn. I had to look it up. Torunn is actually a female. I don't know this Viking name, and this chick is absolutely a Viking. I don't want to hear nothing about it. I don't care if she's modern day, and I don't care if she's got bangs. She is a freaking Viking through and through, all right? She is, wow, absolutely murdering it in this book. The ghost of Bohr in the background, in the past, some of his Valkyries, I guess it could make sense that she has, it doesn't make sense that she has, it doesn't make sense that she has Valkyries, or that Bohr has Valkyries. Because it was Odin who created, but I'm also thinking of I'm also thinking about comic books also. It was Odin who created Asgard. It was Odin who created Valhalla. There is no need for Valkyrie if there is no Valhalla, because they're just brought to the land of the dead, right? The Valkyries bring the dead heroes who died with their swords in their hand, bring them to Valhalla. That's the whole purpose. Otherwise, you just kind of show up in Niflheim, in hell, right? One L. No double hockey sticks there. Singular, baby. Solo hockey. Anyway. And in the past with, he looks kind of like Heimdall, but this is the original depiction of Bohr. In the past is also Thanos. And the only thing I can say about Thanos, besides the fact that he's freaking awesome in this, is that the dude's wearing the same clothes he's always worn. Come on, man. Come on, we can notice that super Skrull chin in a heartbeat. All right, we could tell Thanos. It doesn't matter if Thanos is wearing freaking farmer's uniform or he's dressed as Deadpool. Even in Deadpool, we'd still see that chin sticking out through that freaking mask. All right, it doesn't matter. So this guy, like, he's got the same freaking clothes on that he's always had on, and it's like this guy's got one outfit. No wonder this guy's mad. If this guy went to Burberry, all right, got one of those cool little freaking scarves, you know, he goes out there with the AEW crowd, this dude, like, he'd be in a much happier place. But no, instead, he's here in the past, doing the same thing he did in the present that he does in the present. Some people might have a problem with something that's said in here. He says something about what would a god know about dying, and he's talking about Bohr. The casual Marvel fan might think to themselves, hey, but the Asgardians are the gods that can die. It's the Olympians and all those other gods who can't die. Asgardians are the only ones who are considered gods who can actually die. Yes, but the thing is that even though that was technically a thing, for the most part, the gods didn't die, and there weren't enough of the gods to know, per se, that they could die. I don't know that anybody who's born a god knows that they're actually capable of dying, but there was no Idun at the time either, so there's that. More importantly, though, there was no Ragnarok yet. So is it guaranteed that Bohr knew that he was capable of dying? Possibly, because he didn't say anything to the contrary. Instead, he simply ran forward, and this is just Thanos, I guess, making a mistake, thinking, oh, you're a god, so what would you know about dying? This is one of the reasons why, growing up, I was always, even before I was reading the Thor comic books, I was in love with the Norse mythology, because these were gods who could actually die. That's very surprising when you're looking at mythology, yeah? I mean, even Jesus stayed dead for 3 lousy days. I mean, come on. And technically, it wasn't even that. Let's not bring religion into this. So, what do you call it? I love the idea of looking at this, and it kind of sort of just a little bit seems like Bohr is looking through and seeing Thor, but he's not. He's seeing the Draugr. One of my absolute favorite things in here, which solidify, because the whole time I'm like, I'm very confused, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to get back to my confusion in a moment. Once Torun actually started explaining what the Draugr were, I mean, I don't care if you played Skyrim or if you read the Norse mythology or you looked into Tolkien, who absolutely loved Norse mythology, or just whatever, or you've read these comic books before where you've seen the Draugr, or you're seeing Walter Simonson's run right now called Ragnarok, which is based on his version of Thor from back in the comics, the greatest run of any comic book ever. And then he's doing this over, and I think it's Image comic books, but he's doing, his version of Thor in the far distant future, post Ragnarok, where somehow Thor survives Ragnarok. It's amazing. It is amazing, and I love seeing this story continue. But here, Torun explains the Draugr, and the way that she describes them is beautiful. There's these little fish-looking creatures swimming around, and they're basically memories. The Draugr are trying to consume them, trying to eat them for something. But meanwhile, they're reflecting your memories back at you. So are they consuming them because they love them, or are they consuming them because they hate them? It's hard to say. It's genuinely hard to say. Also, here, 2 little tidbits of info. You're probably wondering about this. The first video I did as a review, just right before this, actually, was Murder World Wolverine, issue number 1, which is actually part 3 in the Murder World series, but whatever, it's Marvel for you. Go back and check out that, and I explained the thing on my head. And some new information I'm going to give you. Also, I'm all sorts of weirded out today because my kitten died. Not Bagel. Bagel is fine, but my new kitten, Stinky, technically Popcorn, but I call him Stinky, and I love this cat. Absolutely love this cat. My kids had to stay home today because one of them were sick, and Stinky wasn't feeling good all day yesterday. I thought about bringing him to the vet, and I just didn't. Is what it is. And today he actually died, and I'm like, he was walking around and everything, but he died sitting in my youngest son's lap, which really freaked him out, but it was cool. We went and we actually buried him with a real. My youngest son actually got to dig him up and dig up a hole, and I finished it, and then we buried him, and we had like a little service for him, and it was really, really touching and cool, and it helped them a lot. So talking about death in this, yeah, man, lost Stinky. It's a shame because usually anytime I close my sliding glass door to do a review or talk to anybody on this thing, Stinky's usually right there meowing, and I got to let him in, and that's why you've always seen him climbing on me and whatnot, because like, how would you dare talk to people without me being in the room? So yeah, anyway, man, I'm going to miss the hell out of that kitten. Anyway, so back to the review. Oh, and all the people who are going to leave, F your stupid dead cat. F you. And your stupid bad raise you mama. How about that? So, the love that one Valkyrie will show to another, I dug that. Torrune is interesting also. Let me put it this way. So many things are turning very SJW-ish. And while I'm not one of those comic skaters who's just everything is about hate with them, I'm about good stories. That's all I care about. I do love the idea of spreading love and things like that, but at the same time, I'm not about empowering women over top of the dead bodies of men. No, I'm about empowering people. I believe that people should be empowered. So, yeah, I love the idea that the Valkyrie in here in the modern day, all of the Valkyries, whatever, they weren't all just like, I'm a strong, independent woman, blah, 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 blah. Nobody is independent in this world. Nobody. And if you think you are, that is called a delusion. That is called a delusion, and you should probably seek therapy for that. Because as big and strong and tough as I am not independent. No one is. Welcome to a world filled with humans who are programmed to be societal. In fact, the worst torture you can commit on a human being is solitary confinement. So I never want to hear, this is why anytime somebody says, I'm independent, no, you are not, you are delusional. But I love the idea that in here, that's like a sidebar, but in here, I love the idea that women were actually shown being weak. Mind you, these are Valkyrie. Anybody who knows anything about the Valkyrie know that there is nothing weak about a Valkyrie. I'm talking the freaking shield maidens who were badass Viking warrior women who defended their lands. They would look up and be like, all you men think you're tough. Which one of you wants to go against a Valkyrie? Like, no, we don't want to go against a Valkyrie. And that was my Viking impression right there. And fairly proud of that myself. I love the idea, though, that it wasn't one of those cases where, like, Bohr would be like, he picked up a Valkyrie, and she was like, my lord, yes, my king, and she was subservient. Because that's what a Valkyrie would be. Not because she's a woman, you have to be a woman to be a Valkyrie, but because that's what the Valkyrie were. They were subservient to their liege. I've always known that to be Odin, but fine, it's Bohr here also. the Valkyrie that's running around with Thor, who looks like the one from the movie. It's not one of those situations where it's like she just comes out of nowhere and she's got no weaknesses, and even when she's drunk, she's still able to kick everybody's ass and ha because Mary Sue's. And no, we like to see emotion. We like to see character building. We like to see weaknesses, because if you don't have weaknesses, then you have nothing to overcome. Stories are about seeing heroes made. This is the biggest reason why people have a problem with Superman. You know, the original Mary Sue. I think he was the original Mary Sue. But I mean, even, let's bring religion back into this. Even when you look at the greatest story ever told, the story of Jesus, he's a god. He's a human, but he's a god, depending on your denomination. Either way, even if you just considered him a prophet or a great man, the dude went through trials. He went through tribulations. Is your bitch-ass Mary Sue, I don't care if it's a male or a female, are you going to tell me that's a better story than that story of Jesus? Overcoming the tribulations of the devil in the wilderness, in the desert? Like, is that what you're going to tell me? Do you honestly think that these stories of these incredible people, humans, who have had adversity upon adversity stuck on top of them, piled on top of them, compound like billows of the ocean, and overcoming them one after another, and seeing them fight through these insurmountable odds, or so we're told to believe. Do you think that's a better story than somebody, and it's typically a woman? Nobody does it with men, and we would hate it if it was done with men, just like we would hate it unless it was done tongue-in-cheek. Like Machete. Machete is hysterical because it's done tongue-in-cheek. But if, like, Machete took himself seriously, if the movie took itself seriously, you'd be like, this is a dumb movie. This is a freaking dumb movie. I love the idea that the Valkyrie in here didn't just go through and just start wiping the floor with everybody, because that's what I'm used to seeing nowadays in comics. It's like, oh, we're going to put a woman in this, so obviously she has to have all these check boxes marked, and that main check box, all the sub-directories, they all go to this one where she can't have any weaknesses. Wrong answer. This is why you get people in the manosphere screaming about, dumb women and stuff like that. I happen to like women. Just ask my wife. Ask my daughters. I happen to love women. So I'm happy to see that characters were actually made here. Now, I didn't see much of a story with her, unfortunately, but it's also in issue 2, and it's also titled Thor, so it is what it is. But I would like to see more of this Valkyrie, and maybe I need to go back and read more about her in the past, and I'm sure you guys in the comments will, tell me, yeah, Professor, start with this issue where, Torun started. Start with this issue where they first introduced this character. Start with whatever. By all means, I told you, I do actually read the comments, even the ones that I probably shouldn't be reading. But, man, oh man. So much of this comic book I loved. One of the things I didn't like about this comic book, I didn't like the things that were already there from before, Torun started this run, whenever the hell that was. Like Odin being inside the hammer. That's dumb. Now, obviously, it's temporary. It's going to be temporary, clearly. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But for now, it's like, it's based off of the idea that there was something else in the hammer. That's the thing that especially kills me. Odin had to go inside the hammer to get rid of the thing that was in the hammer before that. Well, whatever it is that was in the hammer before that, that's not the way that it was originally created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and his brother Larry Lieber. That was something entirely different. That was just, you must be worthy to pick up the hammer. And then somebody came along, I think it was Jason Aaron, who's just like, well, let's explore why it's worth it. Now, how about this? Your ideas suck, okay? You're all about making a big splash and doing something wild that nobody expects, like cutting off somebody's hand in a comic book, which always comes back at some point or another, and usually in the dumbest ways imaginable. So you don't particularly impress me. Some things you do are going to be interesting. Gore the God Butcher was amazing in the comic books, and the movie kind of sucked a little bit. But let me tell you something, man. The things that were left over from back then, they were frustrating to see. But for now, Thor is a king. He is the king of Asgard, as, Donny Cates made him to be. Did Donny do that, or did, I think Jason Aaron did, whatever, somebody did that. One of those two people did that. And he is at least acting like a king. He is at least acting like he's powerful. The end of this comic book got me like, oh, talk about, cliffhanger. I love the idea that Dr. Doom's going to be involved in this, because just reading this one story and not knowing anything that happened in, previously to this, I like the idea. I like the characters as they are presented in this issue. We'll see. I'll probably go back and read some of the previous issues and see what's up. If I like the next issue, I'll absolutely go back and read everything from the beginning of Torun on. Or, obviously, if Torun's like, hey, Professor, I think you should go back and read this stuff, be like, all right, fine. If the writer's going to ask me, how am I not going to? But for now, this was pretty good. What's one of the things that another thing that I didn't like about this comic book? And this could fall to the editor, because I've talked to enough editors and writers about this. This could come down to the editor, any of the editors, or it can come down to the writer, in this case, herself. I need to see more asterisks. I need to see in the story, just like in the olden days, just like back in the day. You want to keep readers like me loving your comic book, make the story interesting, and give us things to reference back to. Show us where they are instead of making us hunt for them, because a lot of times I don't feel like hunting for them. When something happens that came from another story or another book, even if it's in your own run, especially if it's in another comic book series, right? Asterisks, editor's note on the bottom, see issue such and such of such and such comic book, volume whatever, done. Conversation's over. Suddenly I'm like, that's back in there? Let me finish reading this comic book. Then I come back and I look and it's like, yeah, so the thing there, I don't fully understand. Let me go back and look at it because that sounds interesting. Then I'm going back and I'm reading another comic book. Now I'm visiting my LCS to buy more comic books, or I'm just addicted to the Marvel Insider app, whatever the hell that thing is, Marvel Unlimited, right? I don't know why I have 3 fingers up. I only made 2 points. Let me put 2 of them back down. So my point is, and that's how my videos get demonetized now anyway. I think that at the end of the day, this was a good comic book. A couple little things, mostly nitpicks, stuff from before. The one thing for today partially falls on Torun, partially falls on, what's the name of the editor in this? It's not Nick Klein. What do I have Nick Klein in my mind? It's all at the bottom here. Desktop scrolling. Will Moss. Oh, I'm glad I came down to this. Yeah, Will Moss shows some images of the next issue, which is promising to be amazing. Also, they talk about a new character being introduced, Nidhogg. Newsflash, I'm pretty sure Nidhogg has been in the... Actually, I know for a fact Nidhogg has been in the comic books before. And they're showing that he's a big dragon. Yes, Nidhogg is a gigantic dragon that sits at the base of Yggdrasil, the world tree, that... Here, it brings people to the different 9 realms, right? Or the 10th now in Marvel Comics. Anyway, to all the realms. And Nidhogg gnaws at the bottom of the, at the roots of the tree. And there's a squirrel, Ratatosk, or Ratatoskr, which was also in the comics recently by Ryan North, the Squirrel Girl comics. Anyway, Ratatoskr is a little mother effer. He's kind of like a Loki type character. He just runs down and teases Nidhogg and says that it came from the what was it, an eagle? I think it's an eagle at the top of the tree. And they'll run back up to the eagle, and the eagle never had a name in the Norse mythologies. It would run up and be like, hey, Nidhogg just said such and such about you. And he'd be like, hey, well, you tell him. And then pretty soon it was really them, and they'd have like confrontating, like, that was what Ratatoskr did all day. Little freaking butthead. Anyway, and once enough roots are, then the tree dies, and that's when Ragnarok happens. All these different things to cause Ragnarok to happen. Love the Norse mythologies, man. I think, long story short, too late, this was a really freaking fantastic comic book, man. I really loved this. I'm looking forward to see more stuff, and I'm pretty sure I read some stuff by Torun before. I'm really enjoying the hell out of this. And if you're not on this comic book, you should be on this comic book. If you are on this comic book, then let me know some other things that I don't know so far. Say enough things, get me interested. I'll go back and read some of the other stuff. Otherwise, I'll just wait for the next issue to come out, and I'm probably going to review that also. I love reading good comic books. Anytime, here, listen, let me quell the audience right now. Even though I will come across a bad comic book and talk about how bad it is, and I'll try not to bash the individual themselves, you know what I'm saying? Unless they indicate something that I genuinely goes against my morals, right? Like if you call people in the military murderers and assassins, I'm going to call you a piece of trash who your mom probably should have swallowed you like she originally intended to. I'll say things like that. I'll absolutely bash a writer, you know what I'm saying, or anybody if they say things that go completely against my morals. But other than that, even writing a bad story is not going to make me bash the writer, right? Or drawing bad art is not going to make me make personal attacks against the people who created a work. But I will still, talk bad about the work. I will still say, I don't like this. I don't like it because of this. I think that this is kind of, not worthy of being in a comic book. I think Marvel needs to reconsider, some things, and just it is what it is, right? I will absolutely say that that. But I usually don't read the next issue when that happens, right? Or the only way I will is if I read like 3 or 4 good issues and then all of a sudden we got like 2 or 3 stinkers in a row, then eventually I'm very quickly off of the comic book. So whenever you guys say, hey Bill, how come you're not reading this? Because I didn't like it. That's why. If I read a comic book, I'm probably going to do a review about it. If I read a comic book and I don't like it, it'll probably be the last review I do about it for a while at least, until we get some kind of a change or an update or something, So I'll jump back on Thor, saying? As long as it keeps on being good, I'll absolutely jump back on Thor. I saw like Tarun has like 4,000 some odd followers on Twitter. I have a feeling that number will go up as more of us start jumping on this book and reading these books if they're really good, if they're half as good as this issue. And that's even with being massively confused by the stuff going on. Like, case in point, Thor's got a sister now. Like he's got like a little sister. Like he's got this little kid and talks like an adult. I can't comment on that yet because I don't know what the frig is going on with that. But again, eventually, hopefully my interest will be piqued enough that I'll go back and read those things. This almost feels like it's a half-hour long review. I'm good. Talk to you guys later. Like the video. Watch an ad. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.